so thrilled. Hey.
We're all gonna die.
Yeah. So flash the lights on and off.
The sun is trying to fucking kill us. That's the truth.
Welcome to the last episode of Trappist Transfer.
The sun is not trying to kill us. The squiddies are using the sun as a gun.
I mean, that's what we...
I still think the
Yeah, we
sun is
already
sentient,
have a
and that's my
scapegoat.
truth.
Right?
That's Ashlene's truth. Sentient sun is like,
It's not even
fuck
True Secret's
humans.
truth. It's actually its truth.
The sentient sun is trying to kill us.
Yes.
I'm with you.
Right?
Sentient sun.
To be fair, you're very
Good.
impressionable.
It's a
at
good
this
album
point.
title.
The way that
Sentient sun.
does.
Sentient
Yeah,
sun.
right
Sentient
that down.
sun.
You mean the tequila?
Anyway,
Yeah.
hi, welcome back.
That's what I'm saying.
We are very distractible right now and thoroughly engaged. It sounds like my players engaged with the fact that the sun's trying to kill them again.
We were trying... Well, we engaged with it, but then we were trying not to by talking about tequila.
It's because sadness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
This
the
might be
sun.
the last episode of the Trappist Transfer.
Also,
Join us
Of like,
for a eulogy.
that's how we actually. We do this game for like 6 months to a year, and then we straight up just like one day just like, and then we all died. And that's how we end the game. And it's like
We already blew
Bill
the
cut the
earth.
feed,
Right? Mic drop.
and it's just out, and we're like. Like, yay! And we're like,
Yeah.
Then the rest of the live feed is just the Yule log.
Which
Oh, I
you will
love
log.
this.
But it'll
Except
be-
instead of a log, it's a spaceship burning.
Yes! It's like, it is...
oh,
we are the log.
That's good. That's real sad.
Let us join your Christmas
Welcome to us
celebration.
already planning the end of the game and enjoying us here. If there's any fans out there, all 5 of you, who
We love
including
you,
those in
the
room,
5
we love
of you.
I hope you have tech
We
skills
love
because
you.
please give us a burning spaceship Yule log.
Yes, please.
Or can one of our artsy friends do a thing? Connor, can you set a spaceship on fire?
I mean, I can.
Cool. We film it, and then Netflix will give us $1 million.
Well, I can make one out of
Yeah,
paper mache if that's what we need.
All right, we'll get back to this.
I can definitely
We
do
definitely
a
got to continue
video
on with the
loop.
show, but I like this idea.
Or we
I
could
wanna
just
hang out.
show the Vader Yule log.
I saw that.
Oh, I love that so much.
We did that 3 Christmases in a row, and it
Google
was really nice.
Vader Yule log.
Yeah.
Yule
It's
log.
don't even just go on YouTube.
So
it's
as-
5-hour loop. It's amazing.
As
Yeah.
these thoughts of Yule logs are fading from you, as you realize you're in reality now, and
Oh,
all of
no.
these subconscious strange thoughts.
Gravity is
came
weird,
up.
and my tits are down here.
Exactly. I don't know. Does Penelope have big
Oh,
tits?
yeah, I
No.
imagine this. What, really?
I
No, they're like
Abby, what's your canon here? Like, oh yeah, I've imagined this.
I just, listen. Listen, Linda.
Kids.
I feel like it all is,
She's
very...
not Lara Croft.
Right, exactly. Like, it all depends on the person. I just didn't think of Penelope as flat-chested.
No, definitely not
like,
flat-chested.
very traditionally feminine. So you
Yes.
would be
Quite
sporting.
French.
Correct.
Yes.
I just assumed
I
you
love
were
that you
you were
know
like an
what they
anime
mean.
character.
Well, when you have to think about presentation all the goddamn time.
Right?
What? This is getting out of control. No, I love it. I'm wrong. I'm out of control. I'm thoroughly enjoying myself.
We're trying to
Viewers,
adjust to
questionable.
being in our bodies, okay?
Yeah.
No, this is good.
Yeah.
Like middle school in like 3 seconds.
I'm having morph anxiety.
Yeah, actually, no, this is perfect. So there is odd giggles and these things. This exact thing is happening on some different level, right? Because when the body is down, as it has been for 3 years, right? Like it's not like a cryogenic freeze that breaks the cells. It is as of yet so far. I'm not going to define the mechanics to it at the moment, but bodies are preserved very well in a way where their biological processes are still sort of going, like they're maintaining themselves, but it's not like they're aging as much, right? They are, it's a slow process, but it's...
Do they
There's
maintain
nanotech bullshit that we'll talk about later, probably.
basic, like, muscle density and things like that?
Oh yeah, nothing
Okay.
atrophied, the bodies are well taken care of. In fact, as you are coming back to yourselves and looking around at the tubes that are on your level, right, you see there are robots, right, the spider robots that are kind of like moving tubes around, but they're also jarring it, like creating certain levels of stresses for the bodies that keep their muscles going. A
Like,
little bit of alcohol.
biological functions?
There's no robots jerking anybody off, but there is.
No, I'm sorry. I'm having a moment where I'm like, channeling Kaster.
Jiggling your guts enough that they're still functioning.
I'm just saying that, like, we're
pretty well,
realizing that we're gonna have to take care of that now.
Oh, yeah. No,
Yeah.
Like, not on a whim, like, not whenever I want.
As you
to.
have that thought, and we're still going to process the ways that your body is coming to, you look around and there is very clearly an easily labeled bathroom facilities because you are suddenly realizing that this is a need. Because as I was saying, your bodies are still going through the normal processes.
Yeah.
So you have a level of hormones that are built up. And this is a real strange level for depending on... Basically, imagine however you want this to happen for you in a meat suit. You feel inexplicably horny. You feel hungry. You feel all of these things that are just like built up hormones that your body has not vented. As if this body's been sitting around for 3 years and still doing its normal thing. You have fluids that need to be excreted in various ways. And it is unfucking comfortable because you haven't had to deal with this for years. And maybe you never liked dealing with it in your meat suit. I don't know. But now it is painfully present in the suit you were wearing. And you are sort of like discreetly, like there are clothes and things waiting for you and whatever you like so choose, but like there are some humanoid techs actually who are there like talking to you, recognize them a little bit. I don't have a name for him right now. Bob.
Yeah, Bob. This is Bob.
Bob the body tech.
Bob.
And Seeger.
Bob.
No, they're all called
See,
Bob.
that's what I thought of. I thought Mirror Mask.
Turn the page.
Bob.
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 I love your mask. Anyway, so they are like, you know, Bob is there, and Bob's friend.
Bob.
Bob.
Sam.
Bob.
Sam.
Bob and Sam. Sure.
Bob. Sam.
And they're like gently kind of like guiding you towards like facilities as needed. You kind of come to recognizing that you are one of these robot kind of like maintenance bots, but like that was doing a thing. And you sort of come to actually absorbing that bot's sort of perspective. And sort of becoming that bot for a moment and seeing what it's supposed to do and pick up this thing and put it down. And then once you do that, it's like there are no new orders coming in for that side of the bot, and you assert yourself as the sort of owning programming, like central processing for that robot. And
No
now you're there.
consent. No consent. It's not an AI. It's just a bot. I'm a bot. Okay.
We're really screwing with your sense of self. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and
I do not
I
regret it.
eject a bunch of oil.
Oh.
I
It's
just
actually
wanted to-
plasma.
Robot plasma.
Robo-plasma.
Next, that's
Connor
my
goes,
next.
Damn it.
That's my next punk rock band
Robot
name.
plasma?
Yeah.
Plasma. It's good.
I
It's
mean,
good.
it is a biosynthetic analog to plasma. Boom. Those
Viable.
science words.
Like I
But
said,
also viable. I want to be really clear. We could do a thing, but
Yeah.
it's grown, but it's definitely synthetic. It is biological, but it does the same processes in robots.
so you're saying I fart too?
No.
No.
You have very
Not
efficient. I like. No. You have very efficient.
How biological am I?
You're not.
that
You're not that
biological.
biological.
You're
This
a
is
fucking
very
robot.
Yeah, this is very mechanical. I'm just saying, like, you know, there are components that are.
Well, I was just
semi-biological.
testing how
The
much
limits.
biotech you
You're a
wanted
drone,
to you
not a
wanted to
clone.
insert into the story.
Not
curious.
in this particular place. There
All right.
is biotech.
Okay, that's fine. That's
Star
fine.
Wars
Just checking.
explain.
No, it's cool. It's good.
I like biotech.
Cool. Yeah, you actually have a battery system you were aware of, which you have a like you know your battery's 80% full.
We just like turn them off.
Whoa, that's
Talk about consent.
whoa.
That was OOC, and it was honestly just a question. Y'all reacted.
No. Well, how would you say that to a biological being, Ashley?
Also,
Well,
like,
Can't you just turn you off?
depending
Yeah.
on how
It
Comms
sometimes
3
I
has
wanna say
loaded
that.
into
No,
this,
not to comment.
that might be like all that Comms 3 is right now.
That's
so,
what I'm wondering.
yeah,
like,
if you shut it down,
hard shutdown, lose all the data.
snap.
Your party is
I'm
already turning on you.
I'm suddenly really anxious.
I'm just curious. I mean, you did say he was taking up a lot of. They were taking up a lot of processing.
Well, actually, we said the opposite. That
there you go.
the way I thought about this was like a bunch of ingredients coming together for a cake, right?
Mhm.
Is that the ingredients are making like taking no more space or
cannibalistic.
volume than what they were before, but now they've come together for something new.
Okay.
And I would describe it in the past, like whatever combination of these different systems were not designed to interface in that way, but that you are now like at least no more of a drag on the system. But if at all, it seems like a little bit less, as if they are operating more efficiently between themselves than before.
Good job.
I
So,
belong to the ship.
Have you seen the movie The Thing?
In the snow with the head?
actually, that is a very accurate description of the movie.
I
In the
like
snow
it.
with the
Yeah.
head.
Yeah.
Spider head.
Yeah, the head, the spider head.
Yeah.
That
You got to
movie, I
be
love it.
fucking kidding me.
It's that time of year.
You're
I
welcome.
count that as a Christmas movie, by the way. So if anybody,
Yeah, no, it totally is.
It is
So
indeed
down.
it's as much a Christmas movie as Lethal Weapon
Die
Never
Hard.
seen
and
it.
Die Hard.
I think I've seen that.
Batman Returns.
Batman Returns.
Also, totally Christmas movie.
Anyway, I love all this. But
Back
This is
to
your
the ship.
Christmas episode.
Penelope
Okay.
requires a long hot shower because she really misses those.
it is there for you, 100%.
True Seeker doesn't put clothes on and just goes to the bathroom. In the bathroom.
Okay, thank you. Just shit. And Truth Seeker shits themselves, just like
All
hammered back
four.
to reality.
Not even shits themselves, but
clothes.
just squats and is like, done.
Don't look at me. Or you make eye contact with Bob.
Oh.
Bob's your uncle. Anyway, no, you go elegantly
What is
to the bathroom
worst
like
way
you
to
would.
say Bob's your uncle ever?
We just have to giggle at this.
As a
what
proper
did you say?
society dictates.
You're never allowed to say Bob's your uncle that way again.
I don't think I have ever said Bob's your uncle until that moment. Now.
Yeah,
And never again.
No.
It was still good, damn it. Everybody's
Aw,
laughing.
I've missed all of you.
This is the holiday season that I embrace.
Right.
Chosen
Happy
family.
holidays.
Happy holidays.
Holidays.
And Hollow Nights. Wow.
Holla.
Oh, God.
We've digressed. Is this what
I
it's
am
like to
cat
wake up
hurting
in a
tonight.
meat suit?
I'm cat hurting. Really. No, this is great. This, for anybody tuning in right now, this is definitely us role-playing very strongly at the table, characterizing the confusing nature of your consciousnesses being re-sleeved into bodies that they haven't been into for years. So doing
Penelope
great
was
job.
not confused at all. She just went and had a shower.
Yeah, solid. Everybody else is giggling around you. Penelope's
Yeah.
like, this is not my first rodeo, or second rodeo, in fact.
The
But
12.
still, it's uncomfortable. So you were describing taking a hot shower.
Yeah.
In fact. So it's a strange level of like, I want to liken it to, do you remember watching DVDs growing up, right? And we're like, oh my God.
VHS?
No, DVDs. Hold on. Both. My point is, like, you get the DVDs and you're like, oh my God, this is so much clearer. And you're like, versus VHS, you're like, wow, this is amazing. And now you go back to like DVDs that maybe you still own and you're like, oh my God, there are like 5 pixels in this, right? Like I'm used to this like 4K Blu-ray shit, and like I didn't notice the transition as much, but now I look back. So this, where I'm getting to that is like, this is that level of like, as good, and especially for you as like being aware of the weave and the mesh, as much as you're connected to that, like you've realized how much you've sort of mentally washed over the resolution of the hold, which has admittedly become worse in the last few weeks because of things. Not like crazy, blocky or anything like that, but definitely like some polygons are not as smooth, perhaps. The colors are not as seamless. It's still good, but it is not.
It's not the really real.
And it becomes painfully aware to you as you're sitting there in the shower and you're feeling things drip and you're watching the water move, and there's a moment for what you see is like the fluid dynamics and how things are moving and mixing in turbulence and all of the soap bubbles, like the infinite complexity that is these, like, is reality, is painfully beautiful to you for a moment, but it is also jarring in that like, oh my God, what have we lost in there? Is kind of hits you a little bit. And like that is almost sickening in a strange way for you as you are like also feeling uncomfortable fluids moving around your body again.
Good thing we're in the shower when we puke then.
Yeah, right. No, it's a strange level of beauty mixed with horror, right?
Yeah.
And that is, I think, part of this sleeve sickness, right? The re-sleeving sickness. Abby, how do you think you're handling the meat suit? Unless Connor, do you have anything more to say? Sorry.
No, we've done this multiple times, multiple occasions. So like,
It doesn't get any easier, but there's a
doesn't
little
get
you're
any
prepared
easier, but like we know we're gonna puke in the shower. So
this is my process.
yeah.
Abby.
So I imagine the way I imagined it is that first, Kaster is one of the people who gets lost in the darkness. Like while it is always jarring, they also always know that it's going to be jarring. But part of the kind of like helpfulness of knowing it's going to be jarring is that the darkness seems to last forever. So it's almost like a bookend, if you will, or like a tab, like, so this was happening, tab, long darkness.
You're great at organizing.
Right?
With eternity.
And then they wake up because when you talked about the tube, what I imagined, because of the way that we would come out and be sickness, is that you would literally roll over and potentially have a trough.
Yeah.
And I literally imagine Kaster rolling over and just like, bleh. But like imagine the worst night that you never wanted to have.
Yep.
So like darkness and confusion, but also like lights and brights and sounds and like stabbing and puking.
Well put.
Right. and that at least auditorily, Kaster is aware of movement and like what they understand to be their cohorts, but like the physicalness is overwhelming, and they know that it's overwhelming, and they have to pay attention to it. So they are. And then the one thing, like, we're definitely not. Sorry. I just imagined all of the ways that Kaster could react to the bodily functions that are now overwhelming. But because Kaster has done this so many times, if what I actually imagine is set up for Kaster with this sleeve, because it's theirs, maybe in some kind of like container or like wherever it's stowed somewhere. But Pollux has made sure that this thing is safely stowed, not touched by anyone. A blanket, a full like body length blanket kind of a thing. Like it's
weighted blanket?
Yes. I mean, that works if you're laying down, right? I just imagine something that is texturally uniform. So like
a compression suit or something like that.
No. It's still just a sheet. So that one who has like fumbly meat suit arms can just like
wrap real fast.
Right. Exactly. So anyways, that's what it is. However we choose it's not weighted though. Like that's because the meat suit is already feeling like a weight.
So well put, actually.
Yeah.
Everybody let that sink in. To interject, and I still want to hear more for sure. As you are wrapping that blanket around you and kind of like, sitting there and like feeling a small sense of normalcy come back, right? Like, and still that level of discomfort, you are having like a powerful flashback moment. And you, a part of your analytical detached mind recognizes it as a bit of like dormant memory in the sleeve. Right, that maybe like you have a moment of realization that is like, this is one of those things that I've scooped out, right? Or is it not? Is maybe stored elsewhere?
I scooped out while I was in the hold. But yeah,
it's like a weird. It's like an echo of the like. It's like, oh, the moment you're living it again, you recognize it, but it's not a thing that is like present in your memory if you went looking for it before, right? But it is this reliving of a very similar situation where you remember waking up from being re-sleeved into your body for the very first time, and like being one of the first experiments in sleeving technology, and there was no one there to help you, and it was you like living the horror of it the very first time and how visceral that was, but also what you learned from it and the techniques that came out of it and the sort of down the line, like why you have this blanket, why you have this ritual of handling the resleeving. And just like that, the tether of that memory kind of like fades, like it's still there and you feel that presence, but it's not like it's a film reel and you could follow it into the past of what happened before or into the future. Like you just have that snippet of like remembering waking up the first time, and then it becomes less sharp and it kind of fades a little bit, but it is familiar and terrifying, but also why you have the strength in this moment now.
Cool.
It had an idea.
No, it's good, and I have lots of visuals to go with it.
Good, I'm glad. That's my goal. It's my storytelling style to help you visualize it.
Yeah.
Cool. So wrapped in that blanket, when you're kind of there, like, what do you do when you sort of see the rest of the tower and you're like, Bob is trying to be chill with you, but also like guiding you where you need to go.
Right. I mean, I feel like I definitely would still, like, Kaster would still need to take care of their bodily functions. So imagine, if you will, like, Saturday morning after the party, and like,
Yep.
you gotta like shuffle to the. Why? That's right. Then honestly, like, Kaster would take care of whatever businesses they felt like they needed to take care of their businesses for their meat suit. I will let you, the audience, fantasize about that.
Cheap ear shits.
Yeah. But they would just ultimately take care of it the same way that one might check things off a list. Like, oh, meat suit needs this. Great. Done. Meat suit needs this.
Evacuated X. Boom.
Right.
Relieve. Boom.
Boom.
Wash. Boom.
Boom. Exactly. I mean, and we would definitely go down the line of like evacuate, relieve, eject, like whatever those needs are, all the way down to like, and then clean. Clean is the last one.
You remember making that list over decades.
Nice.
By the way.
As we add one more bit of comfort to that.
Yeah. It's a process.
Is Kaster wearing a gendered sleeve or a neuter sleeve?
So the thing is you don't know. Like, Kaster, like, unless you were aware enough when Kaster rolled out of that fucking tube and into that goddamn blanket.
Oh, no, I was in the shower.
I'm just letting you know. Yeah. Then you don't know.
Cool.
The way that the sleeve appears is like the most neutral of neutral. Like, not. And that is up for perception. So, like, for example, like, not too tall, not too short, not too big, not too small. There are no...
The most average.
Correct. Although I found some real creepy pictures. I'll post those later on my Twitter.
I want to see creepy pictures.
Yeah, you do.
Go on.
Actually, you would like these, by the way. But ultimately, if anyone is to feel a kind of way, I don't know if any of our people would feel a kind of way about this. I mean, our society is so different now, but there are definitely no obvious secondary sexual characteristics. So there's no chest to speak of one way or the other, in that sense, or other sort of like...
There are muscles, but you're lean.
Right.
So you see underlying musculature.
Right, and there's like no mid-area bulges.
Can I offer, now that we're talking about now, like maybe like a visualization for that?
Yeah.
Kind of like I mean, you're wearing clothes, and maybe eventually you'll have something that is maybe like semi-form fitting in some ways, just in terms of like efficiency suits.
Oh, for sure.
And at that point, like imagining it like a anatomical dummy, and not in any sense of like a Barbie doll or anything. Like, I'm not doing anything like so crass as that, but like a level of it's an A&P class, and like this is the musculature, and this connects this way.
Exactly.
It's like the most efficient. Like if skin just went over muscles without any of those additional pieces, just being like, oh, that's the musculature layer, and then there's nothing else you need to care about, right?
Right. Well, and like once they come out of like that whole process to be clothed in what they're used to being clothed in, it is the most utilitarian of comfort.
Yep.
So imagine, if you will, like stretch pants and shirts, but with like pockets and stowaways and like for all of your specific tools, up into also like layered stuff, like just to keep warm, just to care for that meat suit on top of those things. So like I don't think of like form fitting like Star Trek necessarily. Because I also think of like efficiency for whatever kind of layer you might be in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I would say it is relatively form-fitting, not like a Star Trek.
Well, but I'm saying the lower layer is. Yeah. The lower layer is form-fitting, but there are other layers.
Utility code.
Yeah, exactly.
Cases, for sure. Yeah. And this is something like I'll describe now since you're getting into it, and then I want to move to Ashley for how Truth Seekers is also transitioning. But the clothing you were very aware is like nano fabricated, and it's particular like it's designed to be something that is, and this is kind of like standard suits for the crew, right? Something that is durable and is very like hydrophobic, right? So it has an odd ability to change the geometry, and you know this. Penelope knows this very clearly because of the fabrics. Actually, I would say this is something that you had a hand in developing, or at the very least, like your foundation, right, connected to it. But like I think this is close to your heart. Yeah. But the fabric itself is, if you looked at it via an electron microscope, you would see that it's kind of like a carbon nanotube. But the tube via like bots can change the geometry and shape, and can be hydrophobic by that, like having basically like the water or liquid is not able to wick up those geometries, to very like sharp corners where you can get actually quite a lot of flow. This was my master's. But it's like, so that process it is perfect at heat regulation with that as well. So it can remove liquid, like it can wick away from the system. It can also protect you from water externally, right? It keeps the temperature along your skin at like the perfect level, so there is no energy transfer. So in the sense of like what temperature your body wants to run at, it feels like being in the perfect body temperature bath. Right, that level where you don't feel hot or cold, it is just like perfectly synced with you. You feel that level of comfort, like you were weirdly in a perfectly contained meat suit with this artificial skin, like clothing.
I would then only, just real quickly, I'm just going to augment that.
Please do.
So Kaster does have additional garments on top of this thing. If that's the case for these garments, it seems weird. It's old fashioned, but it is.
Oh yeah, it totally.
I'm just saying.
You're the kooky professor,
right? We ain't gotten to my sweater collection yet, but we're working on it.
Nano sweater,
right?
Ashley, how is Truth Seeker? And Truth Seeker's like, you are having this additional level of disjointed feel with this resleeving because there's now two of you in this single meat suit. Like the digital combination was oddly more fluid, right? And that like
now I have two personalities trying to move the same body.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So it really does feel like oddly like a strange conjoined twin kind of feel. So
like one tries to go one way, one tries to go the other way.
One gets one leg, one gets the other.
It's still very simpatico, like, right? You're still kind of the same drive. Like you're not so radically divergent, right? Because it was only a few years. You know, for a multi-100-year lifetime. I know a few, right? But for, multi-100-year lifetimes, like, but still, like, it's not entirely diverted, right? But there's still moments where, like, you're feeling mannerisms that both want to do, but one is mirrored and odd. It's like, it is...
Well, for one of me, it's been years. For the other one, it's been, like, weeks? Since I downloaded my consciousness into the ship.
Well, in terms of like you're both completely like independent narratives, right? Like that are individual beings at this point. But like, this level of confusion is, I think, apparent just in the chat about it, right? It's like, so it's not like you're going to be like, one leg going that way, one leg going that way, but it's going to be like not quite in tune with itself all the time. Like a little more like tendency to stumble, trip a little bit, to kind of have your attention wander to separate ways for a moment before you bring it back, right? So that's also like adding to this complexity. But like, how are you processing like popping out of your tube and dealing with your fluids?
Dude, how's your tube, dude?
I'm trying to be cool about it, man.
So I have a question about the suits you described. Do they all look the same?
You're not in them yet, right? You're still mostly like, you've got like maybe some like privacy cloth over like whatever, like
Loincloth.
Privacy
Privacy
cloth.
cloth.
I don't know, call it what
We
you will.
might,
Privacy blanket.
we might be
Underwear.
on that.
Well,
All right, cocks out, whatever.
Yeah.
I
You're
mean,
naked, whatever you want to do, imagine, or like you get a choice. But yeah, you basically get like the clothes are authored to you like whenever you're ready. But like there's the bathroom facility to kind
right,
of
I'm
like,
just
take up
asking
and
if
clean.
they all look the same, like the
Yeah.
suits you're
They're
describing.
very utilitarian, right?
Okay,
Like, you know, it's like you could put buttons on it, probably, but like, you know. But like for the most part, like, you know, it's the uniform is like people often choose to wear just that,
Mhm.
but there is also a lot of customization. Like to that extent, that's kind of still like, you know, antique and retro
Yeah.
and kind of interesting. Like, oh, wear a coat,
right.
cool. Are you cold?
Well, that being said, I also imagine Penelope's is incredibly detailed in some sort of patterned fashion.
oh yeah, I
Oh,
mean,
We're not there yet.
No patterns.
whatever way you want.
Yeah.
Well, I'll let you describe any augmentations to clothing you choose at a future date and down.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I would say what Truth Seeker is doing first, they don't want to put clothes on because that's too much. Like first, they just need to like take care of bodily functions, go do their things. Well,
Okay.
they're very much
Let it hang.
Party at the
like
Spire.
neutered body. Like they in part of trying to make themselves unbiased, they try to take away any like
Secondary.
any gender bias or like secondary things. So like they kind of look like a combination of Desire from Sandman and Light Hope from the newer She-Ra. And then couple that with like the physique of kind of like a less masculine Ken doll. that's kind of what Truth
Wait,
Seeker
how do
looks
you
like.
get less masculine
Yeah,
than
Just
Ken
Ken?
like
dolls are
I feel
not
like
very
Ken dolls are
masculine.
very like they
They're-
got those like really barrel chested.
Yeah, they're
You know what I
bougie.
mean?
Oh, I guess it depends on
Yeah,
which
they're
era.
yeah.
Well, I'm just thinking, like, I had a Ken doll that was very much that triangle
To be
shape.
fair, I wasn't allowed to play
Which
with
is-
Barbies. I played with Bratz dolls, so I have more of a
That's
frame of
fair.
reference for what they're shaped like. My mom
But
said
when
they
I think
created a
barrel
healthy body
chested,
of a
I
sugar
think
man.
like
Yeah.
actual
Not wrong.
barrel.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
is,
but
it's
I
different.
mean that V is definitely like mask coated,
That's fair.
especially with big pecs. And I'm gonna stop talking.
Listen,
This is a whole thesis.
listen.
Anyway,
I'm
and then
interested.
so when Truth Seeker gets back out, I feel like one of their main things they try to do
Skills.
when
Lady
they're
Red
like
Hawk.
getting back into their body is to like do like really intentional like tactile things. So like one of their augmentations on their clothing is that it's all buttons. Like and it's like one of those like kind of like side things that like are buttoned right here. You know what I mean? And it's like a flap that closes. So like they, as they're putting on their suit, they have like I don't know, like 12 buttons or something they have to intentionally like do. And it's like really fumbly at first, but as they are going, like it like makes them be more conscious of like, these are my hands. This is how I use them. This is how I be present in this space. And it's like one of those things like if we have shoes, it would be like they still have ties on their shoes, like that sort of thing. Like whatever like tactile things they can do when they're first starting off like in their meat suit, so to speak, that can like kind of center them and remind them how to use their muscles.
Dig it.
And
Nice.
so it's like a very like present, like true feeling.
Nice.
Unbiased.
Unbiased feeling.
Yeah.
You spell unbiased as you go up the buttons. U N B. That's terrible. Just kidding. So you, I like that a lot, and that is feeling very centered. You feel an additional sense of like having to pull yourself together as you pass by the mirror, which you note is by the entranceway, right, / the exit, but like was not visible when you first come into the room. They're very well aware that like you kind of have to do yourself up and get prepared, like, but it's a vital part of being re-sleeved is like connecting with that image again
This is what I look like.
and trying to identify with that image again and sync up, right? Because there's that disjointed sense of like the piloting a meat mech suit, right? And like all of you
gotta get used to the interface.
yeah,
Also, if you
all of
augmented yourself in the
yeah.
The
Oh yeah,
holds,
if it's
yeah.
slightly different, right? Yeah. So
Mhm.
like this is a process that all of you are somewhat going through, right? In terms of like, you know, you're like kind of steeling yourself for it, like you're prepped in whatever way you need to be prepped, and it's like the last thing you do before you leave is like you kind of turn towards the mirror and you're like and like stare for a while, right? And there's this weird sense of like being in the mech suit, right? Like being behind the eyes, like that this isn't you. You recognize the face, but it isn't you. You were the thing behind those eyes. And as you're kind of breathing into it, right, like you've gone through these mental techniques before to kind of like enter into the phase, like putting on the mask, right, and kind of like merging that consciousness idea with this piece. And it's people go through various levels, and it's not like it's perfectly fixed, but it kind of helps. And for you, it's really awkward because it's like two are vying to put on the mask, right? Like which is the dominant piece to kind of step forward for it, and there it ends up being like this like sense of blending still for you, as like, you know, maybe one of you is looking out of this eye with the right eye, one of you looking through this eye with another eye. Like it is still really disjointed, but you're like going through techniques and you're holding it together, but it is weird.
Well, it's good that the techniques I'm going through center both of the brains.
Yeah,
so.
no, I mean, because you both gone through it, right?
Yeah.
Like, so it's like, okay, like you're in a way, like, as the boon sort of helps, like allowing you to center yourself a bit more, right? Like I'm not describing this in the way that you're being affected by re-sleeping sickness any harsher than anybody else, but the way it's hitting you is different, right?
Yeah.
And so how this is represented, at least for a little while, is that you're gonna all have some like -10 to your checks, right? And kind of like a level of kind of like a trauma. It's not a lingering thing. It will fade, but it's like right now temporarily you've got this sleeping sickness. Way worse if you're moving into like a different body, right? Probably. Mark, how is Comms 3 handling like the smallness of this single but yet physical, right? Like you're getting data that you know, like somebody's told you about the real world before, right? You've seen it through eyes, but this is the first time that you have experienced it yourself, and you know, in a uniquely piloting this shape as opposed to having some sort of like peripheral part of yourself handling a bot, right? This is you in a location.
I'm less concerned about my own shape or size or spatial orientation as I am how I'm trying to align myself with the you know, the human size, you know, the bipedal morph. I'm the odd thing out. I'm also a part of a greater whole, something that's normally not perceived. I'm taking on the form of the invisible, the service robot.
You actually have, so like I say, like you're sort of separate of the command structure of those robots right now in terms of like what tasks they were doing in the Spire, right? So you're not receiving that information, but you are still like jacked into the system, right?
Can I contact other ones of those?
Yeah, I mean, and you can ping them, right? There's more of like a drone feeling happening from them as opposed to like individual conversations.
Okay,
but what I want to say is you have this visual of the Spire, and you kind of have this 3D like mapping system where you are aware of all of their other like locations simultaneously, like so a level of like avoiding impacts, right? Like you're aware of that,
right? So I want to set myself apart visually. Do I have any sort of like cutting torch or marking tool, etcher, or do any of the other service bots have that capability that I can summon to me?
Roll for torches.
No, I'm rolling for something else.
I'm looking for a cutting torch, basically.
All right. So none of them,
or like a laser, a small like utilitarian laser.
None of them do. You do not. Your body does not have that.
Okay.
Currently, at least. But you do have part of your consciousness that still recognizes that you have you can touch the other aspects like of the network that is you, right? You have access to a communications maintenance robot that happens to be in the Spire, and sort of looks like one of the little robots from Farscape,
right?
Right, a little Roomba with the little pieces over it, and so like you sort of contact it, and not like you're even giving it directions, but you're kind of like, you know, like I want to scratch my ear. Right, kind of level, and it's guiding it, right? And it pops over and has a little, like, you know, tiny little laser that's designed for kind of just like some minor maintenance. Like it's not doing much. It's maybe like just a little like surface scratch.
Right, and I have it etch comms 3 on my carapace.
Cool, carapace, I love it. What is it? Comic Sans? Like, what's their?
Impact.
Comic Sans does
Com-
not exist in this
Sans?
universe.
It's canon. I'm down with that.
Comic
Times New
Sans?
That was.
Bauhaus.
Oh,
I don't
nice.
even know. Wingdings.
Nice.
I don't even know what it is.
Wingdings is how we escape.
Ariel.
Y'all are dealing with your
no,
wingdings right now.
no. I got it. Cooper Black.
Okay, so good to know. Those typesetters out there.
And I had something else.
You set yourself up visually apart.
The ones I don't like first. Pink go last.
Oh, do I have do I have a speaker? Can I talk? Can I talk to them?
Have you tried?
I try to talk.
Okay. So,
Oh God.
That's fine. What do you say, and how do you say it?
Oh. How do you vocalize?
I am now at this location.
Everyone just vomits everywhere.
We're like hearing for the first time.
I hope it just lights up all
no
the
one's
speakers.
spoken.
That's exactly what happens. Actually.
Excellent!
Well, because here's the thing: like the robot doesn't have a speaker on it.
Right. But I'm comms three.
Exactly. No, I thought this through because I knew you would want to speak. And loudly. I love you. So like the robot does change a color. For those of you who see it, like when it is like is speaking and the color like pulsates, like normally there's kind of like a reddish glow generally like through some of your operation lights. It goes a little more bluer, so there's kind of like a blue like purple.
If it goes a little more, I was gonna say it's purple, right?
Yeah, it's a combination between the two. Like there's a spectrum, right? And so it almost like a waveform, but in like colors that is vibrating a little bit. So you're aware that the robot is the thing trying to make sound, but the sound is not coming from the robot. It is coming from the ambient, right? Like the speaker system, the comms. You were hearing it through your implants that you have in terms of your ear communication, and it there's a level of directionality to it, so it kind of feels like it's coming from the robot, but it is also very apparent that that is not the source of the sound. Like it's a strange like. The announcement is playing out. But
And I hope that there's like a squeal of feedback and everything. Like it's just a really
only at first, but you're too good. You're too good, comms, to allow that to happen.
Because I've already thought this through.
It's really a meat suit squeal, as we all have no idea how to deal with this.
And I always imagine that comms 3 squeals in excitement in a strange way, like
or they squeal because that's what they expect the sound to be.
Yeah.
And then the like actual like speaker PA system just cuts out, and I just appear on. Does everyone have a HUD display?
Not right now. They have audio, but there's no like visual piece.
Okay, I take that back. If I can't contact their HUDs, I just assume that they would have an implant.
Well, here's why I want to float to the crowd. What I'm imagining is that there are there's like contact lenses, right? There's people like often choose to have an option with that, right? In the virtual, it's easy to kind of augment your system, right? Your GUI, but like. It meets space, right? There's some like variation on hardware that needs to be switched out from time to time, right? It's like it's you can have implants, but that's still newish, right?
I also feel like if you, and just a maybe, but like in this whole waking up process, you wouldn't immediately have a HUD.
Yeah.
If you
let me check my Twitter.
Well, in that case, what I would do is I would commandeer any screen that I could access.
There are a distinct lack of screens in the Spire for this exact reason.
I like how you pointedly like.
Yeah.
Okay, well, then we're back to squealing feedback.
Yeah. No, so it's all you have is audio right now. I think that's fantastic. So all of you, like before you exit your bathrooms and you know whatnot, your locker rooms, shall we say. You have this like comms 3 is obviously trying to reach out and say hi to you.
How are you feeling right now?
Oh, and your headaches are unbearable right now.
So because of Penelope's arm, she does have some like limited access. It's like kind of wearing Google Glass. It's not actually a HUD, but
You got your Apple Watch?
yeah,
I'm cool with that.
Definitely,
Or
like-
a 3D display?
Yeah.
A little holographic
yeah.
projection? Little something pops
Yeah.
up? If you
but-
choose.
Give us that, please.
Yeah, that's totally makes sense.
Yeah.
That's all right.
I was gonna say it's connected directly to her optic nerve because her nerves are connected.
Your
to the
Bluetooth?
arm. Yeah.
Wow.
And so, but it is literally just like a tiny window. But she's pissed at you and sends back an info spike that just says "shut the fuck up," and you're like, this is some really
Can it be a
dirty.
meme? Can it just be a meme?
Yeah, but it's some really dirty code, and you're like, oh, this would be painful if I opened it.
Like if
Oh, but you're gonna open it.
it's the programming version of like I'm writing in all caps lock. I'm angry
yes,
at you.
yeah, yeah.
right?
Meanwhile, out loud, Truth Seeker is like, you know what an inside voice is?
They're human
like
splaining you.
really quietly.
Yeah,
Human
yeah,
splaining.
I'm being condescended to.
Well,
That's just my natural tone.
no, you want to.
Resting condescension
I don't know,
voice.
is there a role for this?
I want to say that you really understand the info spike because that went directly to you, and it's only between you and Penelope.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I
Absolutely,
just-
Yeah. But the human splaining, we're just like,
Is insight the thing in this? I'm trying to look at all the chats here. Actually, hold on. Because of your negative traits, I believe, you've got the one where you are like disjointed and out of.
Oh, real world naivete.
Yeah, real world.
Yeah.
Real world
Oh, no.
naivete.
You can spin me a yarn.
You.
spin it, daddy.
I can't lie, so
And I don't know
I
what's
literally
real.
just to that.
Yeah.
can't lie.
Yeah, Penelope saying that. Yeah.
Oh my, that arm.
All right. All right.
I'm sorry, what now?
That yarn?
So, real world naivete, for those who are uncertain, is a negative trait that I think is pretty straightforward in its title. All right, like you just don't get social cues, you don't understand things, you are not of this world in some ways, and that is I think very apparent for Comps 3. So there's some fun aspect to that, and that basically I can lie to Comps 3 real legit, like at once for major sessions. Like, this is not that time, but I'm gonna help you spin an arm. Yeah, per arc. So this is not the like one major lie.
Oh,
moment, but
okay.
this is, like,
I thought you were
this is
just gonna
like
haul
you
it
having
out on day
social
one.
cues. Yeah, 'cause
Okay.
you're not necessarily like querying information, which that kind of connects to. But this is more of like what you interpret it, and as you see it is like you kind of hear that you're like, oh, okay, humans are just grumpy when they first wake up. Like that's what you calculate out. Like not even about sleeping, but just like, this is like sleeping. You bring out of like stories and movies and things like humans just before they have their coffee, they don't want to be dealt with. Don't talk to me right now. And that's how you interpret it.
I also have the common sense, which gives me the plus
kinda
5
connects
on
with that.
intuition.
Yeah.
So yeah, like that.
So there you were. You kind of piece out, maybe correct, incorrect in some ways, but like the idea of like, oh, they just need their coffee. So a minor misunderstanding, but not like.
So I offer to get everyone coffee,
Yeah, actually,
No.
that's.
and then I just run off and go try. to find
Well, you can talk to me wherever I am. It's fine.
Yeah. Penelope sent you a really
I can hear.
detailed order
I hear you all the
for
time.
tea made a very specific way.
Mm.
She's like, no, I need a cup of tea, and
Is
has
it
to
too
look
early for
this.
scotch?
Never.
Never. Okay.
We're in
I don't drink
space.
anything I don't prepare for myself.
Listen, I don't want to deal with this
many
meat
people
suit
tried
if
to
I
kill
have
me.
scotch.
Too many people
so-
tried to kill
Scotch
me.
and coffee it is. But then I add, you realize that scotch is very valuable now.
Oh God. Anyway, we'll get back to that. I don't want to start thinking about the sadness of scotch being gone. I am not prepared for
Hey,
that.
we
as
can
a
figure out how to
person.
make more scotch.
Mushroom
we have, like,
whiskey.
nanobots and
If it's not made in
Ooh,
Scotland,
mushroom
it is
whiskey.
not
Yeah.
scotch.
we just need to find
I-
a Scottish person to make it.
Whoa, whoa,
Well,
whoa.
Close.
wait a minute.
Penelope has Scottish ancestors.
There you go.
Okay.
Penelope, make us some
So
scotch.
we're gonna make a
She's
still.
gonna make
We'll
whiskey.
We'll call it tangential
Anyway, what were you
scotch.
saying?
Oh, all I was gonna say is I feel like Kaster, like at that like auditory explosion, whatever that was, awfulness, would just be like, bollocks. What you could do thing about this? You know, like sound
You
limitation.
don't even hear Pollux.
Oh,
Yeah.
I forgot.
Oh no, you don't have a HUD.
It's so quiet.
Well, yeah. But not. So quiet, but
Roll
not.
for loneliness.
You, roll.
Go for
You
loneliness.
have hardware, right?
I do, yeah.
What is your hardware value?
So under hardware, I have electronics.
A lot. What do you got?
55.
Cool. Roll it.
Okay.
Good collect.
That's good
40.
sound. 40? You got it. So you recognize that from what Pollux has mentioned in terms of like lack of processing power and availability to interact with the real world right now, because this is why they sent you here. Like you're not directly jacked into them in terms of like the normal methods. Like you will have a text interface with Pollux.
My sweet
when
baboo.
when you get your hub up, right?
Sweet baby.
Yeah, so you have like for the first time in years, more than the mission time, right? Since before with development, like a lack of communication with Pollux.
I would think
away.
that Kaster also experiences it as, well, it's hard to explain unless you were Kaster, is that ultimately Kaster is almost always alone unless forced otherwise, but now it's a kind of like silent alone that, like you said, they have not had to experience in a very long time.
Yeah. So,
Oh, you don't get that
And-
background hum.
And a powerless alone.
right. The like consciousness white noise that having an AI there almost always is. I don't
Right.
know. Like
As well as like someone to bounce off of.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, also just the white noise from the rest of the
Everyone
mines
else.
and crew. Like,
right.
well, that's right. You have
Yeah.
the scroll happening, and you were
Yeah.
separate from that the first time in a while.
Oh, it's so quiet.
Too quiet? Just quiet enough?
Quite enough to have a drink.
I drink to that.
Yeah, it's fair
I'll
enough.
drink to that.
There's a full tea service apparently.
A fucking quiet drink, except for the fucking goblin. Goblin laughing.
Hey, don't make fun of our closet goblin.
Hey,
Closet
I have
gobble.
a gobble hobble. I have the utmost respect for our closet goblin.
Cheers.
Keeping the stream live.
So the funny thing, by the way, about the offer that comes to be made to go get coffee and disappears, like all of you are also aware that in your like locker rooms is like a full like, hey, here's some like tea and coffee set. You know, it's like Insta coffee and some other stuff, but it's like well aware that like here's refreshments you might need.
Did we just do like
No.
the older sibling thing where you're like, yeah, sure, go do this thing that we know is completely
Cosby
like,
did it to
useless?
themselves. Like,
Oh
was
yeah,
gonna
I
feel
mean
bad, like,
they're off
I'd actually-
to boil water, right?
I just dumbed
And-
up. Yeah, I just dumbed up.
I brought snacks.
Yeah.
Penelope is quite aware, but what's in the room is not up to her
Well,
standards.
Yeah. You're doing like the kid thing and be like, oh, mom, dad are like angry and need something. I'm just gonna get you stuff.
Right.
I don't know, like you know.
Or the first time that the 4-year-old makes mom breakfast in bed. That's what this is.
It's gonna be terrible.
It's
Or
gonna
like
be
in those
terrible.
old stories where
'cause
like
I
the
give you
woman is
very
about to
specific
give
information.
Yeah, I
birth.
might actually do that right.
And it's like, what's the man doing? Boiling water. Why? Because that's the safest thing he can do right now. We need sanitization, and you need something to do.
Yeah.
Anything that will stop me screeching on the PA
okay.
system.
Get you
Yeah.
out of the
Yeah,
room.
exactly.
Right.
So as all of you, like I would say, as Commissary comes back with refreshments, all of you may already have refreshments in your hands.
I'm already
you,
drinking coffee.
You come out. Yeah, you come out.
I come bearing Mars bars.
Yeah, like it. You come out of your room, sort of like you know, I don't say simultaneously, but pretty close. Like you're kind of all aware. There's like a feel in the air in terms of like timing. And you meet not only Bob, who's hanging out there,
Bap.
Bab, but you meet two individuals. Like one who is wearing like a clear, like one of like they're both wearing suits, like you are, the crew suits, right? You kind of recognize your faces. One of them though has a like sort of lab coat on, right? Like not unlike yours, but like a lot less pockets. But just kind of like a utilitarian, like they've got some tools and like some other things and like a pad of paper, which is kind of archaic in its own right, but like, you know, well, idiosyncrasy.
So I'm pocket dominant, is what you're
You
saying.
were pocket dominant,
Great.
for sure.
Perfect.
Like, oh my, pocket envy.
I like it.
You're like a fisherman's hat, like
Yeah.
on an entire body.
That's exactly how I
There you
picture
go.
it.
So Andine is, I would say, like sort of like dark complexion, bearded, sort of like nice thick beard, and
Nice.
like kind of a big smile, but like tinged with the level of like desperation that is like, oh, thank God you're here. Like we gotta like, hi, pleasant to meet you. Like we have things to do. So yeah, introduces themselves as Andine, the solar physicist. And then the other with their suit, they have it is certainly still more on the utilitarian side. They've got some markings sort of on the lapel, like showing sort of like a stylized image of the Pollux, right? The sort of like cylindrical ship that marks them as the pilot, right? Like they are one of the crew that is designated to like operate the ship systems. But for them, they've got sort of like, again, also very neutral features, very similar to both of you. They look like in terms of their morph, they look very like, muscular, rather not distinctly muscular, right? But that musculature that we talked about in terms of that sort of like neutral shape. But it is very like lean, very live. And they introduce themselves as Charlie, like the pilot. And they're like, all right, welcome. We definitely need some assistance for people who are a little closer connected to Pollux. We have a plan on how to avoid this, but like we have to show you some of the ship systems before we get there, like as we go. Because we'll need everybody to sort of coordinate in order to handle this, right? Like the processing power normally, with us and Pollux combined, we would be able to handle this. But with Pollux otherwise predisposed to the situation in the hold, in terms of their attention, then we need a human touch. There's some things that even AI hasn't been able to do yet. Yeah, no, I was hoping that this conversation would come there. And they go like, oh, are you?
Please address the robot.
It like, but you look like one of the other robots, and like they look it around, and they're like, they see the iconography on you, and they're like, oh, we were told about you. You were comms 3?
That is correct.
Oh no.
And it just blares out from all speakers.
God.
Yeah.
I forgot what a headache is.
What we said holds true. We're not sure what you can do.
Comps, what if we picked one speaker that was just near everybody that you're talking to currently? Can you do that?
Can I roll
thank
to have
you.
a portable speaker that I can just...
Turn off.
No, I was going to say carabiner to comms' body, and you can speak through that.
Oh. I mean, that would be the lowest possible energy expenditure. I feel like that would make sense.
If y'all are talking about it,
Oh my god.
Is there an engineer?
yes.
Yeah, actually.
Andine, hold on. So Andine mentions that like on our journey we'll be passing through some like areas with workshops. There should be some like spare components you can spend a moment like rigging something up.
Yeah, I just need a little.
For now though, you're gonna have to deal with this.
Is there
Also, because
aspirin on the
as a
ship?
GM, I really like this dynamic. So
I really wish that my arm had a speaker in it.
I was just talking out
would
of
you
your
want to
arm.
give comms 3 control over that?
No, because
Oh,
it wires
yeah.
directly into my brain.
Yeah, so don't do that. Definitely don't.
Yeah.
Can we just
I'm just waiting.
can we
for the
just
time when I
sedate
can just
comms 3
speak
for
directly
now
into
and
your
like
brain.
carry them with us?
How do you sedate
You
an
say-
AI?
Versus turning them off just as bad.
I might have
Comms
experience.
3.
Hard
I'm
reset.
not comfortable with this.
Mark. Comes right. Make an intuition check.
And so that's just a base intuition.
Times
just the-
3.
Times 3.
Times 3. Yeah.
Times 3.
What is your score?
Oh, 60, and I rolled a 6.
Oh, good. So you recognize that you can part of comms 2.
Oh, we get +5 on that.
Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah.
So part of comms 2 roll, right? You -10 because you got trauma. You still made it.
Oh, okay.
Part of comms 2 role, right, of internal communications was being able to jack it directly into the auditory connections of the crew, right? Like that they have as implants. And so you recognize that you could probably reroute instead of to like internal announcements subroutines that you have, right? In terms of like the loudspeakers, you could just specifically talk to individuals or groups, right? Like you assign a subgroup of like these 4, 3, 4, if you 5, 6, I guess if you include like the people in the room, Bob and the captain and whatnot, like you can talk to individual groups, or you can also single out individuals by speaking to their implants. Like you have that control.
Oh yes.
It takes you a minute, but you start winding down.
PSAI.
So yeah, so you can actually like I'll give this to you as sort of like an ability. Like you could talk discreetly to one of the group, like one of the group or anybody of the group or small subsets, and like leave one person out.
Excellent.
But not the whole group at once. Is the key.
You can also talk to the whole group. I'm saying like Commissary could choose to talk specifically to Caster, and nobody else would hear.
Okay, right? I was just trying to figure out whether or not
it just
you are limiting
to do everything
their abilities.
It just allows me.
I was just trying to figure out whether or not they were limiting their abilities.
They're just not doing the loudspeakers anymore. Basically, what they rolled with that.
Right. I would like to be able to speak other than shouting through all speakers. Definitely.
You're getting really tired of these info spikes.
Yeah.
You're just hitting the newspaper?
Yeah.
Digital newspaper? No.
Yeah.
No. Oh, okay. So basically, Andine then says, okay, we can find a speaker along the way. That's head engineering. I want to show you the reactor anyway. So as you go through, so first off, you have to descend the spike. And it's not crazy tall. It's less spiky and more like large warehousey now, like as you're sort of in it, right? And there are like peaks and spires to it, but as you come down, like you realize 10,000 bodies actually isn't that many bodies. Like if you think it's a sporting arena, right? If you think about like Moda Center, like, and this is a little more like conservative with space going up, like upwards. So it's a spike and spire, but it's not the tallest tower, right? It's weird to think how little space 10,000 bodies take up, especially when you lay them out in a coffin shape. Weird. It's a weird.
Oh, that's like
I
only
like
half
that
of
we're
it, I
talking
think.
about this.
I would imagine it feels also
Yeah, right.
very different than the kind of space that people choose to take up in the hold.
Oh yeah.
Whereas you would feel busy and like this is a lot of bodies and this is like a standard sort of like city environment. But when you're in this space with like all these bodies just lined up, you're like, oh, it's not that many. Like that's
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe all of you for the first time, maybe not all of you, 3/4 of you, for the first time, as flippantly as you've been talking about getting rid of consciousnesses, and you may still believe that. You have a moment of distinct recognition of how few 10,000 actually is, and like what it might mean to get rid of larger diversity of humanity. Hey, you may still choose to do that. I'm not pushing you one or the other, but like you have that thought, right? Like that is a valid question about the neurodiversity of humanity that's left, and 10,000 isn't as much as you might think it is. So,
but we had another 20 unbodied consciousnesses.
There's more for sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, is that enough? Right? Like, you used to realize that the 10,000 isn't that much.
Yeah.
50,000 also not a ton, and that also gives you a perspective on 3, or not 3, but like a few orders of magnitude of humanity larger than that, and what that might mean to delete that. Like, it's that's powerful to some extent.
Delete the UK.
We will definitely put it in perspective. Please do not make Delete a UK a t-shirt at all.
Hashtag.
No, it's dead to me. No, thank you. Brexit's too recent.
I was just going to
Yeah,
say,
yeah,
we're
too
starting
soon.
Brexit all over
Too
again.
soon.
I was in London, by the way, like days after they originally, like a few years back, originally voted to leave. And it was like the protests were crazy. Anyway, but
I don't know about that Boris Johnson though.
I don't want to talk about it. Anyway, so you're leaving the warehouse, the spire, and you exit out for the first time, and for us playing the game, into the actual space of the ship. And
I would imagine this is the first time since we left Earth. Sorry,
Yeah.
I mean, but
I would say probably, yeah. I would say a good chunk of you probably spent takeoff in the virtual. Like, there'd be no reason not to, right?
Yeah.
Like,
If everything was running functionally,
yeah,
then
and it definitely was. Like, it was taken care of, right? There's a crew that had their shift, and there's definitely a takeoff crew that were specially trained for that, but they don't need all 10,000 of you for that by any means. Like, a good chunk of you were, I would say, more than usual. There probably was only about 100 that were awake for takeoff because it's not a very long process. But you make sure that, like, hey, is this hatch closed? Cool. Hey, is this thing done? Like, you know, they're going through the checklist. But then, like, the first shift woke up, and they've been out there for the 3 years, right? The first 2,000. One of which is Bob, as you've met. Bob. So yeah, but this is probably the first time you've been out. Certainly, actually, there are a lot of new things that you recognize from. So first off, the last time you saw the space, your orientation on it was different, right? Like the ship was. Actually, let me think about this. Yeah, I would say it's very similar to what it is now, but like there, you feel a list of gravity to one side, whereas before, like I mean, the ship was built in space, like in shipyards around the moon, right? In a spot where it is, far easier to build a large structure that you don't have to accelerate off of a gravitational well. Like that's a dumb cylindrical structure like this will not take off from an atmosphere, but it's great in space, right? So this thing was already like rotating to a certain extent at various points, and so like you were shuttled to it right from takeoff, kind of idea. So like it's always been rotating to kind of generate gravity for you. But now there's a little bit, because you're still under some propulsion, right, for a while, pushing you back one direction, and you realize, like, you know, you're kind of having to lean to kind of compensate for a particular, like, push. And so, like, oh, like, that's where the engines are, right? Like, and, you know, it's not a lot compared to the rotation. You still, it's not like you're leaning real heavily, but you feel kind of like you're standing on a slight hill at most, right? Just a hint of that pushing you backwards or forwards, I guess, as you're leaning. But also as you look up into the cylinder, right? So you're in this giant cylinder, which is a 1 mile radius. It's pretty big. Like there's a lot to it. We could talk about the mechanics later, but I've worked this out. And it is 5 miles long, right? In terms of height of the cylinder. So 1 mile radius, 5 miles long. It's kind of a squat-ish cylinder on the scale of things. But the spire is in the middle of it. So you're on the wall of the cylinder, right? That is spiraling around, creating gravity. So you're feeling like an outward feel. But you see the walls sort of curve up in either direction. And in other distances, you see like large sort of like, caps to the cylinder, right? Circles. But you're sort of in the middle of it, like that 2.5 mile mark, kind of in the middle. Because the idea is when people wake up, they can kind of distribute out to wherever they need. And as you look around, what you also notice is new is there is ongoing nanofabrication, which was designed to happen. Once you got in the ship or in the transit, right, the ship would start pulling from its resources. Nanobots would start going through programs and start building these spires, sort of growing up out of the walls, kind of like plants, like heading out towards the very center axis. And so you see some that are fully formed, some that are like in mid-process, kind of like small sprouts, if you will. And when I say plants, it's because there is a central stalk, kind of like a plant or a big tree, and there are all these platforms that are sort of like flat, like leaves and petals around it. Comms 3, you recognize it from this, and I would say Penelope as well, from your sort of numeric background, the sort of computer pieces. You recognize some of the golden ratio elements. The spacing for these leaves are designed at a very specific irrational number, so it can maximize the amount of light coming down from the center.
Yeah.
As you all look up into the center of the ship, along the central axis of the cylinder is a massive glowing tube, right? That you're all aware that is where like fusion reactions are shuttled. There is like a lot of glowing plasma, not the body plasma, but the actual like sun plasma.
There's so much plasma tonight.
Yeah, but it's the same idea. It's not solar plasma specifically, but it is charged gas that is being torn apart to ions. But
I think
this glowing.
This episode should just be called "So Much Plasma."
So much plasma. Plasma
or bust.
Ooh, yeah.
Plasma or bust.
Plasma and bust.
Just a lot of discharges. A lot of
Just look away.
I'll consider it. So you're seeing these spires grow up, and the ones that are fully formed, you're also noticing are rotating. The leaves themselves are kind of rotating at different rates. And those of you like Kaster, you're kind of aware of this. Truthseeker, you know, because you've written some articles on this. This is designed to create a sense of like the platforms up top can create shade and sort of simulate nighttime for some of the lower platforms based upon certain rotation patterns. And so you have a little bit of a day and night cycle on these different platforms. So you have certain like growing patterns for produce and other crops. And in fact, some animal life actually that can kind of like exist on these platforms. There can be, you know, kind of large like areas, kind of like almost imagine like farms basically, but stacked in interesting ways. So you are led along by Andine and Charlie over to sort of like a central, like you see as like a support structure, like amidst all of the columns or the cylinder. There are occasional like columns that feed up towards the center, obviously sort of like holding it together structurally. And you get into an elevator. And you start to go up, and it is a very slow process for a lot of reasons. That Charlie is kind of explaining to you, like, again, like kind of just to kind of pass the time because you're weird little spiky robots, very spider-like, right? As we've talked about, like all of you are a little fuzzy, right? You're not great conversationalists right now. You're kind of just dealing with the process and like you need your coffee. You're angrily sipping. You're a great conversationalist, but everybody else is like sipping their coffees or teas and just being like,
I'm not sure that coffee will make this better.
It's not. Well, especially now because you're feeling the strangest sensation as the edge where you were standing before when you first got on the elevator was at 1 gravity. So you are aware that for the size of this sort of vessel, it's making roughly like 1 revolution every minute and a half or so. Right, like, and that's pretty fast, but like you don't notice it, right? Like it is that compensated motion, like nothing else is moving relative to you. You know you're rotating, but it's not happening. But for you, that is, you physically feel it as gravity pushing you outwards. It's not gravity; it's that centrifugal force in giant quotation marks. We'll talk about physics later. Take the classroom. But basically, you were trying to fly off into space, and the edge of the spaceship is catching you, and so you feel like gravity. Physics 101. So as you start going up the elevator, however, you are locked in to this rotational velocity. So a couple things you first notice. There is a slight wind all the time that you feel sort of like moving with you. But the thing is, like, the air is moving with you in all the same ways, but the air by your feet is moving slower than your head. And so you're getting this weird differential of fluid motion around your head and, like, body. And as you start going up the elevator, and this is the reason why they're doing it slow, you become aware that gravity is decreasing consistently. You are locked in and rotating the same way, but you're having to move slower and slower, like with different different space around the circle, right? So because of that, you're feeling less and less centrifugal force. And by the time you make it up towards that center spire, you know you're about 50 meters from the center spire. There's scaffolding and other pieces, and basically a large tube where like it lets a lot of light through, but there's rotating pieces around this tube, scaffolding and catwalking kind of ideas. But it's more in like transparent hamster tubes would be a better way to put it, because you are functionally weightless at this point by the time you get up there.
I assume that I possess either magnets or some sort of clamping.
You have spider legs that are totally good for clamping on the things. That's exactly what that is. Yeah, there's a reason I put you in a spider body.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I do like being in the spider body.
That's right. There's a reason Pollux put you in a spider body.
Oh,
thank you.
We're gonna have a gobble
spider
hobble.
body talk. Gobble hobble talk.
Thanks, Mom.
So many spiders. Sorry, Abby. Sorry, not sorry.
Well,
yeah, right.
Well, you don't like these loud, shouty spiders.
Oh my god!
Listen, I've read all 4 of the Ranma books, so no, I don't.
Okay, fair enough.
Thanks, Arthur C. Clarke.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So,
I love that so much.
Good lord. So Andine says that like we're gonna have to cross both sides of the ship at this point, but they take you into a tube that's actually a little more like opaque, and explains that this is a little bit of a pneumatic tube actually. Like with low gravity here, they've utilized airflow, and this is like how we ventilate through the ship. In fact, actually, as you're rising, one more piece I want to describe to you. As you're rising through, you're seeing like you've got a better angle on some of those spires now and the different growing platforms, and you can kind of see that there are different plants growing at different altitudes along the spire. And you're noticing the temperature also increase pretty radically as you're getting closer to this fusion tube towards the top. You're aware that there is filtering and whatnot happening, so you're not being roasted by X-rays and ultraviolet that would be coming off this plasma path, and a certain level of like thermal regulation, but it's still warmer right as you get closer. And you notice the plants changing on the way up, like you're seeing biomes changing on the way up these spirals and until you get to almost like rainforest level jungle kind of environments up on the higher levels, and you're seeing like precipitation. You're seeing like clouds and other things forming. Some of that is sort of like slowly filtering down towards the edges, like with that light like wind that you were feeling from the rotation. You can see like literally sort of clouds moving and spiraling along down towards the outside of the barrel, or not the barrel, but the cylinder. Like you're seeing like microclimates basically created via this process. Like you're feeling humidity change yourself as you go up. Like you realize that this has been a very well manicured and cultivated intentionally like region to create somewhat of biome, somewhat of a
This is a feature,
system.
Not a bug. This
is a
everything
feature.
seems
It's
the
designed
way
to
it's
like
supposed
regulate
to
humidity,
Yeah.
also humanity, temperature,
Yeah.
like food production, like creating the sort of flow and precipitation. It's there's bugs for sure, but it is something that was designed and thought out over a long
Right.
period of time.
So I have a pretty high perception, and I'm a little hyper vigilant. I'm just looking around at
From-
everything.
He's on PCP.
Is it from trauma? Would it be from
No,
trauma?
I'm just
Oh.
trying to make sure if everything's okay. Like if everything's the way it's supposed to be, because I don't know what. I mean, there's some things I know, but there's other things that I know.
Sounds like from
My
trauma.
perception is a 6.
Yeah, so roll perception.
10.
You do notice that I would say your robotic perceptions pick this up more than anybody else's would currently. The lighting seems off in here to you, and part of that is you're seeing fluctuations in the fusion line moving through the center of the ship. Like it seems like there are color variations. You're seeing wavelengths like dips and increases. You're seeing more instability in the line where it might just seem like normal, consistent white light for everybody else. You're noticing a certain level of like disruption happening in it. I'll leave it at that for the moment.
So I relay that to Kaster.
Loudly?
Individually, or
there
do you
is-
say it to everybody?
Well, I say it to everyone, but addressing Kaster.
Oh, okay.
That
So, like, we all hear it
there
loudly.
is. No, it's not loud anymore. It's a little
No.
bit more regulated.
You say it like you're speaking. Everybody hears it individually in their ears.
Got it.
And it's at a proper tone, but it is
Great.
like
We're so happy about this.
now
Yes.
that this is happening. By the way, it does feel even more to you like the spider is talking, like the localized, like the way you hear it in the right ear versus the left ear, like your depth perception and all those pieces auditorily are even more tuned in and feels like it's coming.
Because
from the
I'm comms.
yeah, you're good at what you do. Look at the side of me.
Yeah.
I'm tagged.
Just wait till my concert
I can see that now. Like,
at the Palladium.
Oh.
commissary.
It's good. So as you mentioned this, right? Like it's addressing to Kaster. Andine turns to you and is like, "That is exactly what we're about to show you." Like one of the many things, like we obviously have to deal with the bullet coming our way, the coronal mass ejection, but there are other things that you need to see and bring back to people in the hold to decide what our course of action is going to be. So you finally exit the pneumatic tube. I was like thinking of human pneumatic
Thanks.
tube.
Yeah.
Tube.
Yeah.
For you actually sort of like retract your limbs and kind of like are more like spherical. So you kind of look like a sea urchin a little bit.
Aw.
And so you're being blown and kind of like tumbleweeding through it a little bit.
I was actually hoping that I could have that kind of thing where I could retract the legs and roll like a
Dual
magnetized.
spider.
Well, rolling like a magnetized sphere, right?
This tube, you're not. You have like you could potentially do that in other environments, but this is like you're literally just kind of being blown along.
Okay,
You're
then
made out of like
urchin-
very
ur-
light material.
Urchin it is.
Yeah, you're urchining.
I'm
it up.
urchining it up.
Right,
Yeah.
being blown along. And y'all are kind of like slipstreaming it. It's pretty easy, like for you. Like, but he's a weird non-aerodynamic creature, so for humans, you're fine. Not to say humans are terribly aerodynamic, but you can figure it out.
But I'm a pufferfish.
You all been trained. You're a pufferfish, yeah, like that. So you exit out, and you kind of like at one point notice that the light sort of like changes as you've exited like the main cylindrical space inside of the ship, and you're now in more of like engineering levels. You've gone out a little bit. In fact, you feel about the same level of gravity. You haven't really moved any further out, but you're definitely like beyond one of those walls that you saw. It takes you a few minutes to kind of traverse the distance, but you're moving pretty fast. But you make it out, and you start, seeing this glowing sort of in the distance. Like you're led through multiple doors, where some of you now are also noticing like lighting is on more emergency lighting in here, right, in terms of things are a lot lower, lower
Red.
quality. Yeah, more reds, like lower energy lights for sure.
Yeah.
And they take you to a door, obviously like, main engineering, specifically like, fusion reactor, you recognize, and lead you inside, and you see this on the other side of it, and I'll pass it along. So you were looking down into this like pool of water that is rotating a bit because there's things inside of it. Like we're still low G, so there's this like spherical tank of water that is kind of being cycled around. Definitely pass that around if you would. And you're looking into the fusion reactor. I'm cheating a little bit because like that's actually a picture of fission reactor, but still cool.
Hey, who's
I
to
like
say,
how you
Sorry.
felt the need to point that out.
It's a
Like
moment.
you didn't have
who's
to.
to say that a fusion reactor won't look, outward appearance similar?
Hey, you can. Maybe it's like somebody like retrofit it to look cool. I don't know. We'll take it. But if I may, that same glowy effect is still happening though. So like the shape of it might be slightly different, maybe because we're dealing with like controlled magnetic fields guiding these like the gases that are combining together into new pieces, fusing, releasing a ton of energy. Like fusion reactions.
And there's a
amazing
collider involved, isn't there?
No, there's no collider.
It's just
There's no collider.
force, just hot.
High temperatures,
Yeah.
high density,
Gotcha.
right? So high pressures, right? And in a magnetic
So
field.
it could be like more of a kettle.
to a certain extent.
Yeah.
But it's surrounded by water as a coolant mechanism, as you all know. And what you're seeing is that same indigo bluish color that appears to be like pulsating. Right, it is like this living, weird color, and I'm describing this from seeing this in person, by the way. What you're noticing is called Cherenkov radiation, and this pops up in your little bits. And look it up, kids. Is electrons and other things that are being put off by this reaction firing off through the water at faster than the speed of light in water.
Right.
Now, you can't violate the speed of light in vacuum, but through a medium, speed of light is a little bit slower, but they're traveling faster than that. And what it does is it polarizes the water. So, like, the water, which is like oxygen and hydrogens, you pass that out on me.
I'm sorry, I'm good.
No, you're good. Just like, oh, God, science. Welcome to my student's life. But, like, you get...
Since 4.
No, I got you. We're wrapping up soon. Oxygen and 2 hydrogens, like, below it. And so it's like positive on one side, negative on the other. And as the electrons fly by, like the molecules all align them with the electrons. And as they fall back down and relax, they emit this visible color of radiation of light, right? That is this violet indigo color. And if you ever see it in person, I would love to take y'all on a field trip to Reed College if they'll let me.
On it.
I used to work there
go.
once upon a time. Seeing Cherenkov radiation is amazing and haunting. Like the pictures never do it justice.
You have to sit on your hands.
No.
Oh,
It's just like, I'm gonna jump in the water. No, don't do that.
No.
Don't jump in the
Yeah,
water.
it's real dirty. But it protects you from the bad stuff.
Yeah.
But anyway, it is glorious. And side note and fun fact for kids, a terrifying thing that astronauts used to describe, especially first astronauts, is occasionally they would see this blue glow when they were looking around and when they were floating in space and whatnot and going on some of the first missions or out to the moon. And they realized that what was happening was Cherenkov radiation in the water in their eyeballs. As cosmic rays were passing through their eyes, doing the same thing, polarizing it, and like so you were literally like the fluid inside of your eye was glowing blue a little bit.
Lovely.
That's
This is reasons why
awesome.
we need shielding in space.
I mean,
Yeah.
alternatively, like, I mean, blue glows in general are a classic sort of like human phenomenon for the supernatural. But like, I just think of how many space horror stories have that, right? The blue
Mhm.
glow, like
Yeah.
whether you're talking about like space ghosts or like space monsters, like, or aliens, like, it's the best show ever.
That's good.
Ghost,
Ghost, ghost.
Coast to
So
coast.
so you all are looking at this, and one thing that is distinctly wrong. So does anybody have like? So I know you've got electronics. I don't want that. Does anybody have any tech skills that might be relevant to reactor in any way? Any science? Any research? Perhaps any
I've got
node skills?
decent
I have
research.
a lot of research.
I do too.
I have,
Mine's
also
80.
60. I have 60.
I have a
Oh.
60. Well, a
Amazing.
75 total. Sorry.
Oh damn!
My research is not that good, apparently.
So all of you roll research based on your numbers and tell me what you get. Tell me what your number is and what your roll is when you tell me.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't social for any reason, is it?
It is not social.
60 minus 10, but I got a 19. And I'm rolling.
High and do they cool?
Rolling.
No.
I got a 7. Or so my research is 75, and I rolled a 90.
You got a
I
54.
borked myself.
Oh my god, that's good.
That's
Penelope,
hot.
how'd you do?
Penelope's
That's okay,
research is 50,
I mean,
but with the trauma makes it a 40, and I rolled a 61.
Yeah, worse either way. All right, so this side of the table.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad I'm going to give you
Ew.
bad information. So you recognize that there are bubbles forming throughout the sphere of liquid. And like the bubbles are merging with other bubbles and they're getting bigger. And it is, you're noticing the temperature in the room is also pretty high. Like you are recognizing signs that this is an overtaxed system. And that if those air bubbles, which they don't, exit out of the liquid like it does under gravity, they kind of build up into large air bubbles inside of that. Is not an efficient transmission of heat. And so this fusion reactor could possibly melt down, right? If these conditions continue. This is not like happening like in the next 20 minutes, but it is like a major problem that is occurring, right? And that like Andine is like looking at this thing and being like, our power consumption is out of control right now. This is beyond what the system can support, let alone our systems inside. We are running the hold at a capacity that is like on the verge of our system not being able to handle. Like if it goes this way, it will turn to slag, and then when that happens, the reaction ends in a non-friendly way. And he's like, let me show you the obvious problem to this, and like kind of guides you one particular direction. And you go back out the doorway and like down the hall to like, obviously passing multiple layers of shielding as you see, and you're actually moving. What you realize is like towards more of like a central area, like one of the most protected areas of the ship, where there's like levels of you recognize as lead for like protecting from cosmic rays and any radiation coming from the fusion reactor. And you're led into this massive room. And as you come in, like it is a large spherical space. At the center of that, like you see another sphere that you recognize as the central processing system, like the mainframe for the ship. Like At least for the hold itself, right? It is not Pollux. That is another location you were aware of, like the brain, if you will, of the ship. But this is like the processing core that is the hold. And you're used to this in a special case, right? Like you've seen the stacks that people have, like the individual like places where like digital human consciousness, DHC, like is stored, right? And it is a level of alien tech from the Squiddies. And it's this level of like you see this ethereal blue light from those always, right? It is like whatever is contained in the energy that is human consciousness, in a soul, in the energy contained in that, it is still a level of mystical, right? And you see that. And in these larger mainframes, it is also that similar thing. Like you've seen like virtual worlds before that is designed to hold consciousness, and there's something about that alien tech that has this like this color to it, that like bluish indigo, not unlike that Cherenkov radiation in a strange way, that seems like living and pulsating. But what you notice when you enter this room is that is not the color that you see. Like you see this strained like reddish color, like that it is like shifting and roiling, and it feels like a storm. And like you get this direct sense, like this impending feel and sort of like hair on the back of your neck for you, like a sense of, you know, ship systems is not functioning properly when you've got this combination of power system that is overloading and capacity for the ship systems that is just stretched to capacity. And that is where we're going to end for tonight. As the guy's like, oh, and that's not even the best of it.
Yay.
Thanks for joining us tonight at the Trappist Transfer, an Eclipse Phase homebrew campaign produced by Critical Misfits Entertainment, also another CMA. You can find us on YouTube as well as wherever you get your audio podcasts. iTunes, Spotify, Podbean, other of a billion other podcasts or locations and apps. And be sure to subscribe and rate us wherever you listen to us.
Please
if you like
do.
what you've heard, be sure to check out our other show, the Terra Sentia series, next Thursday on Twitch, as well as on YouTube and iTunes. Thank you to our viewers. Thank you to our patrons on Patreon. Farewell.
On the top.
Farewell,
Cheers.
Odo.